Very warm welcome to Capital Sports 3.0. I am your co-host for this evening, Alan Moore, and I'm delighted to say we have a superb lineup this evening, and we have an awful lot of news as well to get through. It's been a crazy week. How do you say we're going to have to be careful of some of the things we're speaking about as well, because they're actually ongoing situations. And also, it's also show a bit of care as well for those that we're going to discuss as well. Yesterday, a very interesting situation came up where the BBC have basically said that all football is clean and that footballers don't cheat. So that's a kind of a very, very good, thing to plant our flag on today. And I'm going to break straight into the conversation. Two of my co-hosts for this evening, a third was going to join in just one moment. Cian McGibney and Isel Cody. Isel, I'll start with ladies first. How has your weekend been? And my apologies for the Kilkenny shirt.
I was going to bring that up at the start, but if you were supporting Kilkenny women today, they had a great day out. Let's leave it at that. We won't discuss it aside from that. Good. So I'm back from the boxing last night, and I think good on all accounts to see Mick Condon come through a tough opponent on his return to the ring, because often people go for an easy fight after they lose, particularly in the circumstances he did the last time, but he went for a tough opponent, and it was a big success for a return to boxing to Belfast.
Overall, I've seen just some of it just before we move on to the news. A lot of the reports coming from Belfast were kind of praising the matchmaking as well. They said it was actually quite good. Would that be the case? Because sometimes it's a bit, the home fighters are heavily favoured and put in against East European punching bags.
I would think the matchmaking to me was quite good. I don't know how I felt about some of the scoring on reflection. But again, when you're at the fights, you're watching and you're going, the crowd are cheering, and maybe you just need to look back at it afterwards, which is what I usually enjoy doing anyway. But the matchmaking was good. Results are a different, the gaps in some of the results were a different story for me, I think. And I think that'll be my overall opinion.
Okay, so we're going to start off, it seems so. Welcome, Andrew Wiese, as well. Andrew, quick question. How was your first week of training camp with your players?
It was good. Thanks for having me on. Hey, everyone. Yeah, it was good. It was 4 hours of football a day, so it was a lot of time. But we're coming along, and our first game is coming up on Friday of this next week, so a lot to prepare for.
All right, so next Sunday you'll tell us the result.
Yeah.
Okay. Cian, first of all, I want to congratulate you, of course. Kerry winning the All-Ireland. I had thought that Galway might do it, but Kerry were very, very good.
Yeah, they were. Fine. It took them until the final 10 minutes to probably seal the game. Questionable. Probably free in the Killian Spillane managed to win to probably get the final couple of scores started off. But I think all in all, Kerry seemed, the people in my locality are very, very happy for the last 2 weeks with the win. 8 years between All Ireland wins is a famine around here, and people are very hungry for success. I think Paddy O'Shea definitely got it right back in 2001 or 2002 when he described them as animals in terms of success and stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean, I know he was slated for that for call them animals, but if you want fans, you want it to be animals. You want them to absolutely live and die by the results of the team. And, especially with Gaelic football or Gaelic games, because it is very, very local, so it's a great situation. Right. So straight away, news of the week. The first one that we're going to come up with is a tennis one. Emma Raducanu, now she came back this week, played very well in the City Open in Washington. She had this strange, and I mean, it's a terrible. I actually listened to the interview with her on WTA Radio, the Women's Tennis Association Radio, and she said that at the beginning of the match she was all right, and then she said her skin was ripping off. That's her words. I felt the skin was ripping, or my skin was just ripping off. She said in the beginning there was a flap, but then the flap got ripped off, and I was pretty raw and open. Okay, and she said, okay, Isel, I'm going to start with you on this one. This is a girl. She's still only 19 years of age, pushing her body to the absolute limits. Is this a bit too much for someone so young?
Well, I suppose if we think about child gymnasts, are we really going to judge a tennis player who's, legally old enough to vote, etc.? She's an adult now, but it is a huge amount, and what she put herself through seems to have been excruciating. The other thing I think we have to remember is she is under a level of, and I know we can take the approach where we can say she won the US Open last year, and as a result, deservingly has got a lot of acclaim from that, but also the pressure that's on her. Everything she does is criticized from a high, and even to go out, to go out in the City Open. She's now going into the US Open next week. Is it next week? It is.
No,
Sorry, Canadian next week. Canadian is first, isn't it?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
But she's a very tough draw already for that, and it's like, you think about it, it is already, like, we're talking about a year in her life. If she turns around, and like we all saw when she was unwell in previous tournaments, the criticism leveled at her was insane. And you kind of go, well, what is she meant to do? Is she meant to play on when she's in pain, or is she meant to withdraw? And I think it's such a very delicate balancing act that you may not get if you were other athletes in that position. She is now the person that the British public will be associating with tennis. Andy Murray is on his way out. Their other rising star is obviously South African, which they seem to forget. So like, you have that pressure that's on her. I don't think I've ever seen an English tennis player with that level of pressure before, genuinely, where everything is
Tim Henman.
Yeah, but Tim wasn't.
Not the social media pressure, and also that she has to look a certain way.
I do agree. There was a huge amount. I don't think Andy Murray, maybe it's the fact that he has that kind of dour appearance, and like he comes across as being a dour Scotsman. So perhaps to an extent, people don't continue to needle at him because they think it's kind of pointless. Whereas you can see this is a girl who's trying to balance things, and she's actually trying to balance physical pain in terms of.
And also, I mean, she did well. I mean, she finished off her A levels, so she continued studying, which also, shows it. Well, I mean, her parents are both very driven and very academically minded, so it is a great thing. Cian, if she made the quarterfinals this week, she's going to lose over 1,000 points if she doesn't at least make the quarterfinals of the US Open. If she loses early in the US Open, she's going to be well out of the top 50 and could be close to between 75 and 100. Is it that kind of that her agency are pushing her too much as well?
Yeah, she probably is being pushed too much, as Isolde said earlier on. She won it. She won the US Open last year, I think it was, off the top of my head, and straight into the stratosphere of everyone wanted a piece of her. Every media outlet wanted to have a few words with her, and the pressure was on straight away. The pressure is on continuously for the last 12 months and will continue to be so. And every little thing has been put under the microscope. And I think she's still really trying to get to grips with every side of it, the media side of it, the social media side of it. Continuing the studies, I didn't realize she managed to do that. That's absolutely incredible to be able to do that and continue with a professional sporting career. So I think she's really still 12 months on, still trying to get to grips with everything. I think she might be advised to take a few weeks, maybe when certain tournaments are out of the way, just take a step back from everything just for a couple of weeks, take herself out of the limelight, and just see, can that help keep her on the straight and narrow over the next 12 to 18 months.
Andrew, you mentioned last week as we discussed this, and it was a very different place she was last week, where she was just had changed her coaches. She'd named Dima Tursunov from Russia. She was getting flack for that, for having a Russian coach. Just in terms of the US market, how do they see this kind of Canadian-born British girl?
Yeah, she's talked about in the tennis circles, but not to the same extent here as probably across the pond, I would imagine. Like was said before, she's operating in this social media world, and I know social media existed with Andy Murray, but not really with Tim Henman. So, any tournament where they talk about the British tennis players, the focus is on what are they going to do at Wimbledon, and from the American side. But when she came here last year and won that US Open, nobody really was talking about her prior to that, but now people are. And thinking about the City Open, I mean, it's hot in Washington DC in the summertime. It was probably 33, 33 Celsius for that tournament. And so, that's different level, and that's not even counting the humidity. And so, she really battled in that tournament, and people are talking about her now on the U.S. side of things. But she's still really young, and we said that last week. But I'm sure nobody puts as much pressure on her as she does herself, and so she's a rising star here as well. People are taking notice of her here, and battling like she did in the City Open is only going to raise her profile here more.
Okay, no, that's fair enough, and we'll move on to the next one because it's just as important. Cristiano Ronaldo, they basically this is unbelievable. I mean, this is from the Sun, by the way. So really great headline. So you always when I see someone with a body like this, I always think it's like an exoskeleton from a cockroach or something. It never. I don't know. Maybe okay for women it's attractive. Maybe that's why I don't have that kind of body because it doesn't turn me on. But anyway, his Portuguese manager Fernando Santos said this past weekend. Even though he dominated headlines this week by saying he wants to play for United and he wants to come back in and so on, and he was left sitting on the bench as they went down today to Brighton, that he's in such good physical shape that he can play until he's 40. Keane, I'm going to start with you on this one. I mean, would it be wise for him to play to 40? Because he is a terrific player. I mean, I do think I underestimated him and I underrated him for a long, long time. But as age has gone on, regardless of how he's staying in shape, he is still a brilliant football player and a leader as well.
He is. I stopped playing at 18, so I'm probably the wrong person to be asking. Yeah, he's done incredibly well since 2003 to stay or to get to where he's got to achieve everything that he's achieved. I think his behaviour at times over his career has been very, very questionable. His petulance in his early career was something a sight to behold at times. It was infuriating if you were a Manchester United supporter, infuriating if you were a Portuguese supporter. But certainly what he has done through his late 20s into his 30s and now into his late 30s has been absolutely incredible. And he's definitely a man that will more than likely continue to 40, and knowing Cristiano Ronaldo, he'll continue to be on 40. He'll try and outdo Zlatan Ibrahimovic or something like that.
That's true. Andrew, I mean, this is like, I mean, you were joking, I know, that he'll end up, he could end up in the States or something like that. But I mean, he still is a phenomenal player. He was like, I think, wasn't he Man United's top scorer last year?
Yeah, I believe so. Yeah, his resume speaks for himself, and I think a lot of teams would be lucky to have him at this stage of his career. Even I don't know if Man United are lucky to have him at this stage in his career, especially with what Ten Hag is trying to do to revamp the squad. But I think, goodness, if I look like that as I start to slow down, I think I'm okay with that. But he's unreal, and his longevity is unreal. And what he's continuing to do is unreal. I know right now there's questions as to, what his role is going to be this year. But I mean, I think if he chooses to move on from United or they choose to move on from him, another team, a smaller team would be lucky to have him, especially here in Major League Soccer in the US.
I mean, if you can imagine go to Atlanta, the amount of shirts and sales, I don't care. Like, I mean, he's a player. We saw what Wayne Rooney did. We saw what Robbie Keane did, when they were at the twilight of their careers. And I mean, they were pretty darn good. Isolt, I mean, we discussed many times in Capital Sports his behaviour, the court cases, the as Keane mentioned, his question on the sort of like judgment and what he's done in his past. But I mean, would you welcome him at Tottenham if he popped down for half a season?
I'm sorry, have you forgotten that Daniel Levy is in charge of our purse strings? My God, we're never getting him. I think the thing actually today, and maybe it's recency bias in this, that watching the match today, for the first half, he was obviously keen to get on, and you could see he was frustrated when the first goal went in. He was the person the cameras shot to in the dugout initially. They then gave Ten Hag a look in. But when he comes on, even now, and maybe it's a reflection on the current Man United team, but when he runs up towards a ball, you're getting more nervous that he could actually score for them than you do with the rest of the team. And that might show the lack of depth. when it's a man who's pushing on near to 40. But equally, that being said, like when we think about Bergkamp and Teddy Sheringham, I know there was a different era, but what ages were they still playing to? Again, I don't think we'll be seeing the end of Ronaldo anytime soon, but I think his options on where he goes next post United are limited by the fact that who can afford him, being realistic? Who can afford him that would want him?
This is it. I mean, you know, the amount of money you're going to have to spend to get him on board is going to be huge. You cannot balance it out in terms of short sales and merchandise sales, because there's a new generation of kids as well who don't really understand who Cristiano is. Like the little kids coming through now. I think I sort of spoke about it not too long ago, actually last week, with a former colleague of mine on the phone, that you know, when we look at the players like, you know, Wayne Rooney, we spoke about him last week. A lot of people don't really know who he is. Like the younger generation, we're talking 5 years, for example, or 6 years. But once you disappear from the English Premier League, you're non-existent. And yes, he's big right now because Man United are a big team. But very, very soon, Liverpool, despite their travails yesterday, people are going to forget about Sadio Mane and how great a player he is. So anyway, the final story that we have today is one that it's a tough one, and I'm going to open up for Andrew Wiese to come up first. Now, this is about Brittany Griner. We discussed her last week. We were very much on her side, and basically decided that, like, yes, we understand what the law is. We don't understand because she could have got 25 years, that drugs are drugs here. And the biggest crime that was committed was that it was found in her luggage in an airport, which immediately comes in as trafficking. Now, in all fairness, like I've mentioned before, I've interviewed Brittany a couple times before. Terrific, you know, a very good interviewee, and very open and very honest and very interesting. And one thing that we did put on the record, but we it was on the record, we didn't actually put into the article that we did for the Basketball League website, was that one of the reasons when I asked her why come to Russia, she said about the amount of money she makes here compared to what she makes in the WNBA, even though she was number one draft pick. And one of the issues was that she had to earn the money here because she's paying child maintenance at home as well with the twin children that her ex-wife gave birth to. Something that was, it goes to show the character of the person more than what we're only seeing about now in the media. One thing she said just now, direct quote from the court. When she spoke in the court, it was, you really, really felt for her, but this is her, she's very direct, very honest. She said, that I understand everything that has been said against me, the charges that are against me, that's why I pled guilty, but I had no intention to break any Russian laws. She said that she was in a hurry, she just suffered COVID, and she was like rushing back in and forgot to remove this, the vape with the cannabis oil in it. Andrew, it's not a new situation in Russia. It's a very difficult situation. In the States, a lot of people, when Joe Biden says it's unacceptable, there are people saying that this is unfair, it's a miscarriage of justice. From her side, and she's a very direct and honest person, from her side, she just said, look, I did wrong, I know it is, so if I own up, give me a bit of mercy.
Yeah, it's a tricky subject, isn't it? And, from the United States' side, it's all about, whether they're an individual like Brittany is unlawfully detained or not. That's the term that the State Department uses for those that they're really going to advocate for in situations like this. And they've named her as unlawfully detained. It's a tricky verbiage, I suppose, or terminology, because was she unlawfully detained? Probably it was lawfully detainment. But then is the sentence really commensurate with what occurred? I don't know. And from the American side, I would say no, absolutely not. And I am all for the United States trying to bring her home, as well as the other Americans that are detained in Russian prisons. But at the same time, it's tricky, right? Where they're offering, potentially Victor Bout. And we talked about him last week and who he is as an individual, offering him up in exchange for Paul Whelan and Brittany and hopefully others. But it's difficult. Are we putting the world in danger by bringing her home? It's very possible if it's a guy like Victor Bout that's being released. And so, Brittany Griner makes the news here, certainly right now. And like you said, she's very open. She's always been very open in her career about who she is and what she's struggled with. and she's had a lot of struggles. She's she knows she's not perfect, and she admits that, but she also is very open about what she has struggled with in her life. And so, she's in the news a lot. Some of the other Americans are not in the news as much right now that are detained in Russia, but I'm all for the U.S. doing whatever they can to bring her home within reason.
Yeah, I mean, the last count. I mean, I think it was like 200 and something Americans imprisoned abroad, ranging from murder to drug smuggling to basically, for example, tax evasion. They've been, they were caught somewhere. He said, why this whole thing? And I heard this on CNN, and it's let's just say someone I know well, the CNN reporter here, Fred from Germany, and he said that he played it down because he was asked a very leading question of, was it because she is a black lesbian that she was, detained? Is there a way out of this for her? And is it fair to be trading her for somebody who basically, is an arms dealer?
Yes, there's a few things that crop up. Obviously, she pleaded guilty, so that's an admission of wrongdoing, and she's not. From my understanding, at no point was she contesting, because she obviously admitted she forgot when parking to remove her vape. But it's a case of she wasn't contesting the charges. Something, when it's black and white, when something is illegal or not, it's illegal. The circumstances of the case, as you pointed out there, because of the location and where it was found, obviously elevate it. And with most things, there is a sliding scale. So in Ireland, for example, if you plead guilty at the earliest opportunity, you get a reduction in your sentence due to the fact that you've basically saved the court the time of going through a trial. So she pleaded guilty. On the scale of matters, it's probably on the lesser scale. But then again, you also have the fact that from the point of view of, you have a high profile individual. When people are caught drug smuggling in lots of countries around the world, there are lots of Irish people who have been arrested, unless they're on the high profile, like we had 2 young ladies who were caught in Peru, and they became famous globally because they were on TV. But when you have someone on that high a scale getting a sentence like that, it's basically a bargaining chip, because you straight away have someone who, because of their profile, you had her team doing a 42-second, I think, you can't call it a minute of silence, a 42-second silence to mark out her jersey number during their game during the week. And the profile is so big. But then again, however disproportionate her sentence may be to what she actually did, at the same time, there needs to be a consideration about what you trade in this circumstance. And as Andrew rightly pointed out, there is a disproportionate benefit or risk factor here, because while the court may have to a certain extent upped her sentence, not necessarily, and not to my mind because she happens to be a black lesbian at all, but more so due to the fact that she probably is an American citizen. So to an extent, they go, we're going to come down hard here. And as a result, they have a better bargaining chip with someone whose profile isn't going to disappear. My concern would be that as much as the US might like to get their citizens home, what is the effect of putting an arms dealer back loose
on the streets?
The rest of us.
Yeah.
It's not a problem. It becomes a case of, it also says to any country, okay, if we have someone high profile from the US and we happen to arrest them and we just push the level of sentence up, the charges are in order by the letter of the law, but we push the level of charges up, what will America give to get their citizens home? Because that has always been their.
But this would hold on. They say they don't negotiate for hostages, because that's what happened in, and for right or wrong.
As a hostage, they're viewing her as unlawfully detained as a prisoner.
Exactly. I mean, before we go to Cian, I mean, when you look at, say, for example, when CNN reporting it, from when you look at it, and this goes again, this doesn't just go to the American noise, this goes around the world as well. So CNN, they say that there are 2 Americans detained in Russia, in jail in Russia, Brittany Griner and Paul Whelan. There are others here, and Paul Whelan, from my point of view, I still do not see the sense in it. It's not just because of an Irish background. I just still see a very, very strange situation. But Cian, I mean, it's a tough situation to deal with. You've got someone who was arrested for something that, Andrew and I can discuss it, that here drugs are everywhere. It's not like, but it's just simply this fact that bringing it in is seen as trafficking. In your point of view, is there an end in sight for this, or will it end up as a prisoner exchange?
I don't know, Alan, to be brutally honest. It's absolutely horrendous for any of the people that are in those situations. Brittany Griner is the person currently in this situation. It's absolutely horrendous. I mean, you go back over the years of all of the talks, and we'll give you this for this. It's just absolutely horrendous. I mean, I think she was sentenced to 9 years and fined X amount of money. So it's just, I mean, I hope her legal team can sort this out, and others, other American diplomats and things, and Russian diplomats can try and come to some amicable solution in the not too distant future.
One thing I'll just add before we go to a quick break, that playing here in Yekaterinburg, she's beloved by the team. That the Russian Basketball Union are helping her, they're supporting her, they're part paying her legal fees. There's an awful support being given to her as well. The fans very much inside. You see some of the forums, and they're thinking, come on, it's just like it's nothing. So their point of view jars heavily with the government, who are trying to crack down on drugs, because of course in the 90s, just basically drug abuse and drug use was just rampant across Russia. It really severely affected the population and everything basically. But at the same time, the sports fans are thinking this isn't right, and people are asking questions. So fingers crossed there will be a decent solution found to this. Okay, we're back. Everyone's going to mute. We'll be back in just a few seconds with our talking points of the week. Okay, we are back in, and immediately I'm going to just say what our talking points are. I know Andrew's going to have to leave at one point, but we'll hopefully make it to the hot topics, because I have a very hot topic for him that he's going to cover, one that he suggested. So straight away, the first story is one that's I'll say it's unfortunate in the way it's been covered, and also the effects of it as well. It's one that a lot of men fear in every sense, no matter what. And the situation is basically where an athlete was running in the World Under-20 Athletics. Oh, sorry, that's the wrong one. Alberto Tonino. Now, he finished 15th overall in the World Under-20 Athletics. However, as he was running, his shorts that he was using, this is the decathlon. He's an 18-year-old. So in the decathlon, part of his male parts came loose. He was struggling to put them back into his shorts, and he finished last in his heat, 15th overall. The 100 meters would have been one of his decent events within the decathlon. This headline is very kind, actually. Unfortunately, he comes last in the race due to his penis constantly falling out of his shorts. It was covered very differently by, let's just say, other news organizations. Okay, I'll start with Cian on this one. Cian, the Mirror had it as athlete comes last in 400-meter race after penis falls out of shorts as he goes commando. Now, he's since come out and said that the pressure he's under after this, the embarrassment of it, has made him feel very upset and very depressed. This is horrible, and I don't know how to, It's funny when you first think about it, and then you think, Jesus, this is an 18-year-old kid.
Yeah, that's the big thing. He's 18 years of age. Yeah, he's legally an adult, but I mean, that's horrendous. I mean, we all know that the footage of all the different athletes and all those big moments in their lives and all the rest of it, it's kept forever. And unfortunately for this young man, that's never going to go away. He'll move on, hopefully, with his career. Hopefully this doesn't affect him so badly that he decides, I don't want to do this anymore. Hopefully he can continue with his career into the future. But it's an absolutely horrendous thing to happen. And hopefully, as I say, the big thing is he can move on from it. He's probably young enough to be able to move on from it, but it will probably be brought out every so often if he continues with his career into the future. It will be there as a skeleton in the background for the rest of his career if he continues.
I mean, even when we're speaking about it, you do smile. You think like, it's and we can't help it, but at the same time, it's a human being, it's someone's kid. And Andrew, I mean, we both have sons, and I'm just thinking if that happened, you try to make light of it with them, but at the same time, it's pretty damn horrific. And especially the reaction online to it and the media kind of sensationalization.
Yeah, it as Cian said, it's just such a tragedy really for this young man. I think, I think it's so many of us that can sit behind the cameras, even us, but especially fans, have just no idea how much work goes into preparing for these sorts of things, for these sorts of athletes. They're at, the 0.0001% of athletic prowess in their fields, and they train their whole lives for this, really. And thankfully, like Cian said, he's still quite young, and he can still have the career ahead of him. But the embarrassment and the toll on his mental health that this could take, if he just gets on the internet for 3 minutes, he'll be severely affected by this. On the flip side, thankfully, in our social media world where our attention spans are so short, something else will come up in a few days and the world will move on from it. And they might see him in 5 years in another event and say, hey, wasn't that the guy? I think so. And then they might go look it up. But people do move on from these sorts of things fairly quickly. A couple of years ago in the NFL draft, a young man was running the 40-yard dash, and his penis fell out of his shorts, and it was a story for a few weeks, but now he's a successful NFL player, and nobody talks about it anymore. And so I really hope that's a similar situation for this young man, that people forget about it quickly. And even if they talk about it again in passing in 10 years, he'll be a world-class athlete, and they'll be talking about his achievements instead.
Well, no, Galwin, yeah, that is a huge hope. We do know, and just from a football point of view, Paul Scholes at one point, his shorts came loose, and that's always brought up to him, even now, 20 odd years later. So, and again, it's kind of used to ridicule him, and so I know what you mean, and I just hope that, the people who want to ridicule are basically people who are, well, I don't know, they're good smack in the mouth. Isolt, I mean, I have a question for you, and yes, it is gender-based.
Yeah.
If this is a woman,
and they were putting those sort of stories online, it would be viewed as extremely distasteful, as I think it should in this instance. I do have one. I'm currently in the back of the room. The Commonwealth Games are on. Okay. And I do have one question. When he's competing at a world level, and it might sound basic or smart, when you watch women do things like the pole vault, I am, as someone who trains in a sports bra and like shorts, I'm amazed at how nothing moves or rides up or doesn't expose them when they're doing, like, I'm currently looking at the long jump. But those sort of sports, you kind of go, how does nothing move? Like, yes, there's quality of the attire, but there also is a level. If you're at world level, someone needs to be saying, is what you are wearing appropriate for the sport you're competing in? Is it going to stay on? And that sounds really like basic, but I'm sure it's a concern for a lot of athletes who are going on and competing on televised events. I do think I agree with exactly what you've said about Paul Scholes. You often see those worst moments in sport, like, sport's most embarrassing moments. I'm a demon for watching them back. And I'm like, that's something that I think you watch it and you go, oh my God, I died watching that the first time. Why am I watching it again? But Andrew made a very good point. We are now in an era that I think there's so much content available that you get all these embarrassing moments that eventually they hopefully do blend into one and don't become the only thing that people associate with a person. Unfortunately for Paul Scholes, like, he also didn't have the most fortune in being a redhead who had an incident with his shorts. Like, let's face it, he always needed something to be slagged about.
And Andrew's looking very nervous right now.
Yeah. I gotta go now. I gotta go.
Yeah. No, there is. I mean, there's so. If you think of them, we can all name them off the top of our heads. One moment. One that sticks with me is the girl the British bobslayer, who's in the push start, and as she goes to lean down, her suit splits, and then she goes on. Now, I know from a friend of mine, and who had spoken with her coach and said she didn't know it happened until after the run, when her coach down at the bottom, because coach is down at the bottom, when they spoke with her and said, "What's wrong with your suit?" And she looked at the back of it and had split. Okay, the next one I'm going to look at on this is one that's difficult, and this is very much an Irish theme one. So, Andrew, I know you've had a look at this as well. This is about trans rights, okay, and this trans GAA player. It's the person on the right who is about to tackle a player from an opposing team. Now, it's at quite a low level of Gaelic football, local Gaelic football, and we see women's junior. Again, this went up online. And a lot of people say junior, it means children. No, in Ireland we have grades. We have senior, which is the top level, intermediate, which is the second level, and in junior, which is for adult. It's all adult football. Okay, so now in Dublin, they will call it adult football. So adult division 1, 2, 3, 4, instead of the old way of senior, intermediate, and junior. So it's just a grade. It's not an age. This person is from Italy. Has begun transition, moved to Dublin a couple of years ago, works with TikTok. And part of the thing that has been playing up has this kind of like titillation of, that she's also like works in fetish clubs. She's a, DJ, she's this, that, and the other. Iseult, I'm going to start with you on this one. Is this a worrying situation?
I think we also need to factor in perhaps the photo. If we were to see her perhaps in drag or at this stage, like, because you've mentioned she performs in fetish clubs, or to see her perhaps in her day-to-day attire, we would probably be less, I suppose, stopping and going, oh my God, that's a man about to tackle a young girl. Because some of the girls on the junior team they were playing, I think their ages range from 16 up. So junior, even though it sounds like it's younger, it is, as you pointed out, adult football, but there are younger players who are good enough to make the junior team in any club that will play on it. I think the image really doesn't help matters. Now, I would also note I think she scored 5 goals and 7 points during the course of the game, which is
the Italian.
Yeah.
Holy moly. Okay.
Yeah. Now, I saw that online and I was trying, as I mentioned to you, trying to get onto the club site, but as you had pointed out, it seems to be fully gone, just for match reports. But I think the other issue here is optically, when you see that, you straight away go, what is happening? The difficulty is that the GAA at that level, it shouldn't be, it should almost be non-contact, but that doesn't optically change the position or make it any more confusing. If you have girls who are 16 who, if you're a late developer at 16 on another side, you're effectively playing against someone who has gone through puberty. He's quite a big individual, irrespective. And I think the here is, if they're the first team that have made a really, really open policy, and that's great, but you also need to be fair on opponents in that there isn't a league here. I'm not saying if you have a non-contact sport, my views when it comes to non-contact sports are different to my views of contact sports and the inclusion. But I think in this instance, optically, we can all see what the issue is. And I think the score in itself at the end, when he contributed, I think to 2/3, or she, I'm not sure if she's fully transitioned, so I'm jumping between the gender. Yeah. But I think the issue here is if there isn't a policy, what are teams doing?
This is it. This is the thing, and this is something I bumped into myself within Europe as well, because of course we have male and female players training together. And it's funny because I remember Moscow Shamrocks, where some of the one footballer from Carlow was actually better than a lot of the guys, a female footballer. Now, the issue surrounding this is that there has been no policy put in place. There was never a need for a policy, but the LGFA, which is the Ladies Gaelic Football Association, which governs this in Ireland, they yesterday said we've put together like a task force to address it because they don't have policy. Andrew, we saw the whole situation in Penn State, wasn't it? With Leah Thomas. America is an awful more advanced in every sense in this situation, and for better for worse, they really seem to have at least addressed the problem, much better than, say, for example, Ireland or even in Europe.
Yeah, Leah Thomas has been the big discussion point here, a collegiate swimmer. But as Isolt said, contact swimming is quite different than, those contact sports, like Gaelic football or those. And so, and I would say probably that while it is a big discussion point here, I would say the contact sports are the ones where the policies have not been written yet. And I could see situations where this arises more at the adult level, because there's a lot more policies being written for school sports, for university level, high school level. And in a lot of those situations, in the US, every state is able to build their own set of policies and laws pertaining to those sorts of things. And a lot of them are banning transgender athletes from and that is a whole other discussion point. But it is a discussion point. It is a hot topic here in the United States right now. And like Esau said, those pictures are quite shocking. And it makes you take notice of it. And in our world today, and how we're working to provide more rights for these individuals, as we should, it needs to be, every board of every adult league needs to be sitting down and having the discussions about, what does this look like for us? How can we be inclusive, yet how can we also protect our athletes?
Cian, the joke used to be in Ireland that what you call a Monaghan man with an All-Ireland football winners medal, and it was a transvestite or a transgender, because the Monaghan county women's team were extremely successful. Again, there's no fault on anyone's side here, because there is no regulations. There is kind of best practice being put into place. As Isla said, I mean, this person had an outstanding match. Do you think that just maybe, this will be sorted out, and at the moment it's a bit of a much ado about nothing?
Yeah, I think it's definitely a grey area, but it's definitely something that the GA, the LGFA need to come together pretty quickly, and try and put a plan in place, because I'm sure there was parents on the sideline of the younger members of either of those sides, and there was probably questions throughout the game. There may have been questions at halftime. There may have been questions after the game. Was that quite right to have that particular person involved in the game, given that there's no actual regulations written down in the rule book at the moment?
Okay, I mean, I think we're very, very fair on it. So, I mean, we discussed a couple of weeks ago where the rugby league, I actually was asked last week, excuse me. I mean, we're talking about the photos and the titillation factor of this, and I'll show you. This is what they said. This is what this person does in their spare time and so on. And this is last year. For me, regardless of anything, the person themselves, and we're speaking about this. This is why I mentioned about Alberto Tonino. Is there the privacy level? Okay, this person's older, is more open. They said they're playing, for like competitive sports for 20 years or something. They're playing rugby as well. But at the same time, it's very, very hard to understand. And again, I mean, if your dad was a daughter, you're thinking, Christ, as Ethan said, in a contact sport, you're going to put your child out there and they're going to get an absolute hammering. Just a quick round of houses on this one. Yes or no? Cian, will there be a day in, for example, Gaelic football or in soccer where there will be a sort of a like male, female, and I hate to say this, other?
With the way things are going, yes.
Okay, Isolt?
My view is we'll end up seeing open categories rather than overall.
Other, yeah. When I say open, I said other. I should have said open. Yes. Excuse me. Thank you very much.
The category on its own, because I think.
Yeah, I didn't mean the people. I just meant another category, like Andrew.
Yeah, I'm the same. I think down the road we'll see in open categories where people will be able to go into how they feel and how they identify, and it'll be more open and more accepted.
Okay, that is fair enough. Right, we're going to go into a very, very quick break right now and then come back with hot topics. We're running behind time, but we've had good discussion, Stephen. We'll just be bear with us for like a few seconds. We'll be back with some more Capital Sports 3.0. Okay, one of us didn't mute their mic, and it was probably me actually. So a couple weeks ago it was Isel Cody. So hot topics. I'm going to start with Andrew on this. Andrew, tell us why it's very early to be talking about the MVP or most valuable player. So why are people already speaking about Sebastian Driussi?
Yeah, when Alan asked me for a hot topic, I said I don't have a hot topic, but I watched this game last night, and a lot of you in Russia will be familiar with Sebastian Driussi. He a couple of years ago transferred from Zenit St. Petersburg down to the United States to Major League Soccer here, and is setting the league on fire, playing for Austin FC. Last season, I think he had 6 goals, 5 assists. It was but his talent was apparent. But this year, I believe at this point, he has 16 goals and 7 assists. And we're just over the halfway point of the season. And for those of you that don't follow Major League Soccer at all, it's a very, very even league. The league tries to create parity. And so when you have players that are performing at this level, they really stand out. And he's just been absolutely fantastic across the field for the entire season. And it's nice to see, because it's good to see, a player coming from the Russian Premier League and having a lot of success in Major League Soccer, and it's a cool tie to see. But he's really set himself far and above, and if I had a vote on the MVP for at this point in the season, he would far and away be my MVP. There's some other outstanding players as well that are having good seasons, but he's a step above the rest right now. And at this point, and with his age, I see him doing this for the next few years to come, as if he stays in Major League Soccer.
He's only 26 years of age. I mean, that's what I when you mentioned it to me, I was like, what age is he? I kept thinking he was in his 30s, but he came over quite young to Russia. He won, I think, 2 or 3 leagues with Zenit. And then last year, a lot of people were upset when he bought out his own contract from Zenit. So he left the club to move away. And again, to go to the Major League Soccer, he basically bought it out one day, and then 3 days later, he's in the States. Just one question on that. He's not played for the full national team for Argentina, but he is more than good enough to get a national team spot, isn't he?
Yeah, I think he is. And the hard part about Major League Soccer is you really have to perform at his level or higher to be getting looks at, the Argentine national team or those big teams that have players all over the world. But I think when you're calling people in for that 40-man camp to see who's gonna, or 35-man camp to see who's going to Qatar, he should, and he deserves the opportunity, because like you said, he's in his mid to late 20s. He's peaking right now, and if you're going to get the best out of him, now is the time, and this could be the good year for him to get that opportunity.
Yeah, and I think he's playing at a good enough level as well, and he's showing up with a team that's not like one of the best teams in the league, but as in terms of the makeup, he's really, really shown himself well. So, okay, thank you for that. Okay, next one, Issa, this one's for you. And this is a result of a tragedy and an absolute online meltdown from some people. And this is about the young Dylan Quirky, turned 24 this year, a hurler from Tipperary. And this is what actually broke out. It was that he dropped dead, and immediately it was vaccine induced. So, Issa, you got a couple of minutes to tell us just what the reaction is and why is this your hot topic?
So I suppose I actually don't particularly like talking about someone who's just recently died, but I think there is a very important thing to be discussed here about Dylan. Dylan passed away after playing in a club hurling match for his club, Clonolty Rossmore. At the weekend, he dropped and collapsed on the field. He was attended to by medics, but unfortunately passed away. And within 24 hours, you had people going online to push their agenda without, let's just be clear, I am not a medic. All what I do know is that despite what would be, you would discover if you went on Twitter or the likes telling you how someone died, that none of these people have presumably performed any sort of post-mortem on Dylan. And also the fact is that in Ireland, because I actually looked into the numbers, we have circa 100 deaths annually from sudden adult death syndrome. And perhaps one of our most well-known in recent memory was in 2004, I could be wrong, with Cormac McAnellen, who was a footballer from Northern Ireland. And the reality is that sudden adult death syndrome has existed long prior to COVID, long prior to people getting COVID vaccines. It is an unfortunately tragic event that happens. And as a result of Cormac McAnellan's death, which again predated COVID, the GA brought in a lot more measures to assist with players getting tested for various, like just to have basically heart monitoring, just to see if there was any way, because the unfortunate thing with deaths such as with SADS, or indeed SIDS, which is sudden infant death syndrome, SIDS has actually gone down in recent years, the death rate, whereas SADS has stayed relatively even. You can test, you can look for things, you can assume that because someone is a sports player, they're not going to have these sort of conditions. But people seem to forget that by its very nature, it's a sudden arrhythmic event that die from. But also sports players, even though they're being tested and checked, they're at the highest level of performing. So they're putting their bodies under immense strain despite being particularly fit. And I think what the incidents like this, where we already have good testing in place now for and monitoring for county level players, would be maybe an incentive. Obviously, Dylan was a much liked and possibly the only hurler in recent memory on the county team my dad hasn't complained about. So a popular tip hurler. But I think what this brings about is maybe we need to be looking at what sort of policies, and again, the GA are getting lambasted with my policy idea. What policies need to be in place?
Unfortunately, we have some sad news to pass along with it.
In terms of if they are going to have, like, when you go to a club game, are you going to have a defibrillator there? Will you have medics? How many medics, etc.?
It should be there. No, Isa, they should be there because it's mandated, for example, in Russia, where every, like, in a training area, there needs to be a defibrillator. And I remember having arguments saying that we need to move from this training, Andrew would know, then across the press now, move from there to Lokomotiv because there was no defibrillator on site. And we had people from all different ages, all different fitness levels, all different health conditions training with us, and you can't take a chance. It's good, just move on quick because we are way behind in time. And before we go to Cian, Andrew, a couple of weeks, or no, months ago now, Jalen Ferguson, the NFL player, the 26-year-old, he dropped dead of a heart attack as well, but they said that it could have been CTE from brain damage from concussion.
Yeah, that's a big topic here. And, there's starting to be more and more evidence that, especially in those really heavy contact sports like that, you're starting to see CTE. And in Major League Soccer, even they're starting to wonder if that's coming in. And here in the United States at the youth levels of soccer, like my son is playing under 9 and there's no heading allowed in trainings and there's no heading allowed in games. And it's an automatic indirect free kick going the other way if there's any headers. And we all grew up doing headers and it's there in the game, but it's good that we're starting to understand the science behind these instances where this is happening. It's really scary and it's really tragic. And, this is a big one where I lean into the science on it. And, people are talking about concussions. People are talking about, the risk that they play in people's lives, not just right after the concussion, but for the rest of their lives. And it's a good thing that it's now being talked about. And when you talk about the vaccines, that's a tricky, dangerous area to start talking about and how it's affecting this. It's certainly a factor in the conversation, and I think it should be. But we need to also be looking at the individual sports and the training that people are doing in those and the contact that they receive and give out during these matches.
No, that is spot on. Cian, moving on to the last one before, because we were going to finish up quite soon. So, Cian, your one, of course, is the absolute falling apart of the All Blacks. 5 losses and 6. At this stage, they were called the worst All Blacks ever when they had just lost a series to Ireland. The first ever time that Ireland had beaten them in a series, and especially down in New Zealand, down in Hobbitland. They beat them well, but they've lost again, lost badly, and it's a catastrophe for a country where rugby is the state religion.
Yeah, I have to say this is completely trivial given what we've just spoken about for the last couple of minutes. So, but yeah, this in New Zealand, losing 5 of the last 6, they're pressing the panic button. They want Ian Foster out. They want Scott Robertson more than likely to be brought in, or Joe Schmidt to be brought in the short term, or somebody to be brought in to try and arrest the poor results. Going back to last November when they were beaten by Ireland in Dublin, then they were beaten by France in Paris, and then Ireland did the unthinkable and beat them 2-1 in New Zealand. So they seem to be already pressing the panic button. They're not playing well. They don't seem to be the same type of New Zealand team that I grew up watching. They're still top quality players. There's absolutely no question about that. They're just lacking, at the moment, probably lacking a bit of direction. The game plan seems to be little bit stunted. They're just, at this moment in time, other teams have got to their level. And 9 times out of 10, when that happens to New Zealand managed to drive on again, and they go 10 and 20 steps ahead of everyone else, and everyone else spends the next 3, 4, 5 years trying to catch up with them. So maybe, just maybe, everyone has finally caught up with New Zealand, and New Zealand aren't getting that 5, 10 steps ahead as quick as they used to do.
Okay, so it'll mean that they're going to have to innovate, improvise, and overcome what's going on. Okay, We're going to straight in to sports movie magic, and our movie this week is one that I think all of us, we've all watched. I think we've all enjoyed it. We've all tried it. We all have all tried it. And before I tell you what it is, we'll play a clip for it right away. This is one of the start of the movie, and you'll notice a very famous face in it.
Sir, could I trouble you for a glass of warm milk? It helps put me to sleep.
You could trouble me for a warm glass of shut the hell up. Now you will go to sleep, or I will put you to sleep. Check out the name tag. You're in my world now, Grandma.
Okay, that is the opening, one of the early scenes of Happy Gilmore, the 1996 movie. It's amazing that it's actually so old. I mean, I do feel old talking about it, but it is amazing that it is so old. It was a box office hit. It was following up from Billy Madison, his Adam Sandler's previous movie. A lot of same people acting in it. 12 million budget, made 41 million. So I'm going to ask is Brian there just to sort of to bring him into this as well if he's interested. But I'm going to start straight away with Cian. Cian, it's a movie that a lot of people have tried to recreate when they go out to play golf, because it is about a guy who fails as an ice hockey player because he can't skate, has an amazing slap shot, finds out that he can hit the ball a mile in golf, and then tries to make it as a pro golfer in order to get the money to pay off the mortgage for his grandmother's house that's been repossessed. Take it from there.
Yeah, again, another sport that I failed miserably at, so I can empathise with that as well. A couple of misfortunes on the golf course in the last couple of years, but definitely a fantastic film. Probably just, again, it probably put Adam Sandler on the map, probably back in the mid-90s in terms of a writer and things like that. I read a couple of things that he wrote up with one of the better-known co-writers that wrote with him, and I think it definitely helped him, helped keep him going as a writer and keep him relevant, I suppose, in the mid-90s, Alan.
Okay, but this is now when he decides that he can't give up on this dream of making as an ice hockey player. So this is something that, again, I saw this in Canada in 1997, and I didn't understand because I didn't see the movie at that time, and I didn't understand what was happening. But I saw this in a baseball batting cage with an automatic ball pitcher, and I have to say I did try it myself.
Oh yeah, bring that shit on, man. Oh God, I love it. Oh God, that hurt a little, but I'm all right.
Oh my God, son, what the hell are you doing?
364 more days till next year's hockey tryouts. I gotta toughen up. Yeah. Oh God, that felt good. Yeah.
Andrew, have you ever tried that?
Absolutely not. Not in a batting cage. No. I've seen how fast those balls come. I used to go to batting cages all the time, and so no, I've definitely not tried that.
As a movie, okay. So as a movie, where is it rate for you as a sports movie? And like, have you watched it a number of times?
I've seen it a lot of times. Yeah, and I'm a sucker for, mindless comedies. But that one's really stuck with me always. And it's one of those timeless movies here where, everybody, like you said, everybody will try a Happy Gilmore 1 or 2 times on the golf course here and there. And And also, I must say that one of my favorite Twitter followers, like I love to follow. There's a Shooter McGavin Twitter account, and he's brilliant at bringing humor to golf news and things like that, and calling out golfers for things, and I love it. So the fact that there's a Shooter McGavin a Twitter account that is a parody that has, goodness, I want to say it's like 400,000 followers. That just shows the timeless nature of the movie.
Now, as Andrew mentioned, Shooter McGavin, he is kind of the archetypal villain in this. Perfect villain. I actually played it in a really, really good way because there were many other people up for this role. He played it very, very well, and he's a kind of a rival golfer, kind of a typical, white bread, as they would call, golfer who just does the right things right. This line for me is the most memorable of the whole movie. You can judge for yourselves.
You're gonna beat me at golf? Oh, you're on. You're in big trouble, though, pal. I eat pieces of shit like you for breakfast. You eat pieces of shit for breakfast? No.
No, that moment, because I had that moment. I'm going to say, Tim, my son, is most likely watching this because we were in Budapest for his 10th birthday. As you do, you bring your son to like Sin City for his birthday before he turns 10, and we're eating pizza. And he said it because at that time he was very polite. We were eating a pizza, he didn't like it, and it was quite spicy. And he said, "Dad, this pizza tastes like dog poop." And of course, I went, "Tim, how do you know what dog poop tastes like?" And it was unintentional with this. Isolt, I mean, the movie is good on very, very many levels. As Andrew said, it's mindless, it's funny, but it's one you can watch over and over again. And there's a great cast in it as well. Like, would you recommend it for people to watch?
So I'm going to lay my cards on the table very quickly. I hate Adam Sandler, hate him with a burning passion, and yet in our family home, Happy Gilmore is still there on tape. I don't know if we have a video recorder to play it on, but we have watched it that many times. Like, absolutely love it. And it was only in later years when Bubba Watson arrived on the golf scene that I was suddenly like, we need to put back on Happy Gilmore in the house. I would say my favorite scene is where he's telling the ball to go in its home. And it's like, he's shouting at the ball and you're like, I have seen a grown man who lives in this house with me do similar when it comes to his swing is not like that because he's learning to golf and everything the correct way. There will be no messing with the swing. But it's a timeless film. It's like Cool Runnings. It's that the message behind the good guy, the bad guy, like and the IRS, of course, repossessing the house because she wasn't paying taxes. I'm kind of there going, she probably should have been paying taxes. I don't know if I want Nana's house back. But and he even has the minute where he has the bet with the guys who are coming to repossess the furniture. Like, everything about it is the ability, like, in a weird way, the message is quite simple. Someone has a basic ability that they don't realize is there because they're applying it in the wrong place. And once they start to do it, like, even when he gets your man's hand, he gets the alligator that took his coach's hand and then he falls out of the window. It's like everything is just, it's so OTT that I don't think it would work as well if it wasn't a film about golf. I think something about the eliteness of golf and that kind of, you expect them to be kind of that sort of snobbery about the game. And then in this guy comes. And I think in a weird way, you still see it today with people joining. Like, so again, Bubba Watson was this guy who came in and everyone in golf was like, hold on, where did this guy come from? What way is he swinging? Like, everything, not the norm.
As Ethan says, so basically we've all had those moments where I've seen a very good friend of mine, a very good golfer, we were playing in Ireland and he took his driver because he'd been playing badly off the tee and he literally threw it up into trees, like up high into the trees beside the tee box and the sixth tee box. We couldn't get it back. He was asking me to climb the tree because he had a little bit more weight than me, or a lot more weight than me. And he was asking me to climb the tree to get his club back. And I'm like, but that time, putting is my greatest problem. It's a huge problem. It's gotten worse since I got an injury in my wrist where I actually had to put against myself. So I drive one way, I put the other way. This is exactly what Isolt was talking about, this moment, trying to tell the ball to go home, that its home is the home.
Son of a bitch, Ball, why didn't you just go home? That's your home! Are you too good for your home? Answer me! Suck my white ass, Ball!
So that's small, but I will say one thing about the swing, because this is where it all comes in. Because basically, Clubber Line, Apollo Creed from the or Action Jackson, he came in to say that this guy has talent, that he'd lost it, like this coach had lost his hand in an accident with an alligator, and as Eastwood referenced, this is what Happy Gilmore does best. This is what he does best. So this is his amazing swing to drive the ball a mile.
It's all in hips. It's all in the hips. Get off of me!
Hey, just easing the tension, baby. Just easing the tension.
Well, ease it on someone else. What the hell?
Quite unrealistic. However, an Irish golfer, Pádraig Carrington, is able to do the same because, of course, the Irish sport hurling, which he played, which his father played as well, lends itself to this kind of golfing style. Andrew, are you going to try that the next time you're playing out at Augusta?
At Augusta, yeah, you can't get within 5 miles of that place. It's a fortress. But maybe I'll have to try now that I'm living nearby.
Okay, Andrew, I know you're going to run. We're going to close up in a moment, so I'm going to ask you all once around. Out of 10, Andrew, start with you. Out of 10, what would you give Happy Gilmore?
Oh, 9 to 10. It's up there as one of the best sports movies I've ever seen.
Okay, Cecil Cody.
It's getting a solid 8 because nothing will beat Cool Runnings, no matter what you throw at me.
Okay, and Cian McGibney.
7.
Oh, okay, all right, 7 out of 10. Right. Okay, so on that note, I'll thank you all very, very much because Andrew, you've stayed so long, so thank you so much. Cian, thank you again for this evening. Isla, thank you so much as well. Even though you're in the dark now, so you've gone from the light into the darkness, which you should have gone the other way around.
Rolling blackouts are coming anytime now. Read the Irish.
There we go. So I say thank you all very, very much for a terrific show. Really, really appreciate it. And folks, we'll say good night for now and hope you have a super week ahead. The little clips from this show will be actually going out on YouTube during the week as well. So check them out. Have a look at the ones that you actually enjoy the most. Comment, like, of course, share and subscribe. So I'm Alan Moore saying thank you very much. Take care of yourselves. And of course,